Welcome, listeners. Welcome to Innoviti's writing podcast series called Win. You are tuned into our second Win podcast. In the Win series, we are guiding you on performing well in the IELTS Writing Module. In the first Win series, I had spoken to you about the basic landscape of the IELTS Writing Module. In today's Win podcast, I will be starting with task 1 for those appearing for the general training test. That means the basics of letter writing. As task 1 for those appearing for general training test is letter writing. Task 1. Letter. You are given a prompt which is a context or a scenario and you are required to write a letter. In terms of the number of words, you need to write at least 150 words. And when it comes to the time, it is recommended that you complete the task in 20 minutes. Details about the minimum and maximum number of words and how to manage the time have been provided in the Win Podcast 1. I recommend that you watch it if you haven't, as it touches on these important aspects. The link for Win 1 is provided in the details below. Now, come back to the letter. What do I mean by prompt? Let us look at some samples and understand it. There are two samples that I would be covering, sample A and sample B. Let's start with sample A. Now, what is the prompt telling us? Write a letter to your friend who's visiting a city that you're familiar with. In your letter, 1. Describe to her a place worth visiting. 2. Suggest some eating options. And 3. Suggest a few transport options. Let's understand the prompt properly. Since it is a letter to a friend, this means it will be an informal one, isn't it? The context is your friend is visiting a city that you are familiar with. So, that must be conveyed in your letter. The fact that you know the city that your friend is planning to visit. Then, the prompt is clearly telling you the other aspects that your letter should be covering and what are they. You have to describe a place worth visiting. So, you must recommend some place and mention why you are suggesting that place. That is, why is that place worth visiting? Then, you have to suggest some eating options, which means you must recommend some restaurants or hotels where your friend could go and eat. You would normally not instruct your friend to eat at any random place, isn't it? You have to suggest, you would rather recommend some place or places and mention why you are suggesting it. For example, you might say, Delhi has some awesome places for having bhel puri. Since you like it, I would suggest you go to the one in Karol Bagh or Lajpat Nagar, right? Finally, you have to suggest a few transport options, which means suggest ways in which your friend could go from one place to the other. Should it be using local trains or buses or cycle? And do mention why you are suggesting it. It could be any reason, like it could be because it is less expensive, or it is more convenient, it is safe, or the frequency is high. So, as you can see, sample A is actually a very simple prompt, but it has its unique aspects. If you read it in a hurried manner, you will miss the specific requirements and not do a great job in scoring well. You must, you must read the prompt carefully and ensure that your letter covers all those aspects. Now, let us look at sample B. Well, last year, you attended an intensive German course at the Dale College. Your HR has asked you to provide copies of your reports and assignments as quickly as possible. Write a letter to the principal of Dale College. In your letter, number 1, request him to send the documents. 2. State the reason of asking for the documents. 3. Inquire by when you can expect to receive them. Well, who do you have to write the letter to? The principal of Dale College. Is it some unknown college? No. It is a familiar college because it is where you attended a German course. Why are you writing to the principal? Because you need copies of the reports and the assignments that you had submitted to the college while doing the course at Dale College. Your HR has asked you to provide copies of your reports and assignments as quickly as possible. What does that suggest regarding your current state? Are you still in college? No. Are you working? Yes. We know that because it is saying your HR. That is, Human Resource Department has asked you to provide these documents to the company. So, you need to write a letter to the principal of Dale College. In your letter, you need to be mindful of what all you should be covering in your letter. 1. You must request for the documents that you submitted to the college while pursuing the German course. 2. You should explain why you are asking for those documents. 3. You must check how soon the documents can be sent to you. Like I said before, your letter should cover all the aspects mentioned in the prompt. So, you must read the prompt extremely well and then write your answers properly. Now, let us look at what are the different elements of a letter. What should be the flow? I will be covering the specifics of these samples later on in the podcast, so do listen to it fully. So let's move on to the elements of a letter. They are greet, introduce, build the body of the letter, conclude, and sign off. So there are 5 things here: greet, introduce, the body, the conclusion, and finally the sign off. Let's take a look at each of these elements and start with greet. Greet. Depending on whether you are writing a formal letter or an informal letter, how you greet a person would vary. There are 3 entities here. 1. Bruce John Murphy. 2. Helen Murphy. And 3. Dale College. I'm assuming Bruce and Helen, they are siblings. So let's start with the Murphys. So, if you're writing a formal letter to any of them, this is how you should address. First, let's take Bruce Murphy. You will address him as Dear Mr. Bruce Murphy, or Dear Mr. Murphy, or Dear Sir. For Helen Murphy, you should address her as Dear Miss Murphy, or Dear Miss Helen Murphy, or Dear Madam. How do you greet? You must mention the title. It is Mr., Mrs., or Miss, followed by the last name or the full name. Now, when you do not know the name of a position holder and want to write a letter, you can address it to the role itself. So, suppose we are writing to the principal of Dale College. Then, how do we address this entity? We can say, Dear Principal, as you do not know the gender, whether it is male or female, is not known, and the best way to write to such an entity would be to address them as Dear Principal. Now let's take another example. Say that the entity you're writing to is a bank manager, and you don't know the gender here as well. You can then address the letter saying Dear Manager. Let's take another example. This will be the last one. Suppose you need to write a letter to your housing society as you have some sort of unresolved issue. Now, how would you address this entity here? You can say, Dear Manager of the Housing Society. Now, let's assume that you do know the name of the position holder. You should say Mr. or Miss, followed by the last name or the full name. Let's take an example of this. Say the name of the principal is Sheila Singh. You should greet by saying Dear Miss Singh or Dear Miss Sheila Singh or Dear Madam. Let us look at a scenario where you personally know the principal, Miss Sheila Singh. You should say she's a, let's suppose that she's a friend or a relative. If you are writing to her in her capacity as principal, even though you know her, you need to be formal. At best, you can use the first name and say, Dear Miss Sheila. Ideally, stick to being formal and use Dear Miss Sheila Singh or Dear Miss Singh. So, this is how you greet in a formal letter. To summarize, let me tell you a few points. Sometimes people classify a letter like the one I have spoken to you about, like the Sheila Singh letter, as semi formal. My recommendation would be have two categories, either formal or informal letter. Any letter which falls under the categories like semi formal or quasi formal, keep it under formal. So, if it is formal, semi formal, or quasi formal letter, your greeting should be formal or on being formal. So, it would be the title followed by the last name or the title followed by the full name. Let's take an example to understand this. It would be Mr. or Miss followed by the last name or Mr. or Miss followed by the full name. Finally, let's move on to what an informal letter is. A letter becomes informal not only based on whom you're writing to, but what is being written about. So, it is a combination of the two. The letters that you write to your friend or your relative or your aunt or somebody where you are praising their performance in a music show or even appreciating someone's performance in a film. Letters like these come under the informal letter category. The tone is informal in nature. Now, let us move on to understanding how we greet in an informal letter. Informal letter. Let us explore some scenarios where we have two characters here, Helen and Bruce Murphy. Say you're writing to your friend Helen Murphy. How would you address her? Dear Helen, right? You would not say Dear Miss Helen or Dear Miss Murphy. If you did that, she would think that you're either angry with her or you're being sarcastic. The right way to address a friend in a letter is by using their first name. Out here, that would be Dear Helen. For your friend Bruce, it would be Dear Bruce. If you're writing to a relative, then you can add the relationship before their first name, like Aunt Helen or Uncle Bruce or Grandma Helen. And if you are writing to an organization or a company where your friend is holding a position, you should add the salutation and the first name, like Dear Mr. Bruce or Dear Miss Helen. So that's the instruction for greeting. Now let's move on to the sign off stage. There are many options when it comes to signing off, but to make it simple, we recommend that for formal and semi formal letters, sign off as yours sincerely. For informal ones, you can use yours affectionately, yours truly, or even just best regards. In the formal letters after the sign off, do remember to mention the date. So, greet and sign off. Well, that can't make a letter. We'll need to fill up the gap in between as well. After the greet, what follows is the introduction. Let me take each part and explain what you would be doing in it. You need to start outlining the purpose of your letter. You are setting a tone and context as to why you are writing the letter. Having done that, you need to focus on covering all aspects that are mentioned in the question prompt. That is how you build the body of the letter. Following that, you need to proceed towards concluding your letter by mentioning what action is expected and move towards drawing the letter to a close. As mentioned before, that I will be explaining each sample or elements properly. I'm going to take two sample prompts and guide you in a simple step-by-step manner. Let's see what is the prompt that has been given in the IELTS test. It says, write a letter to your friend who's visiting a city that you're familiar with. I hope you remember I had spoken to you about this prompt as sample A earlier on in the podcast. So, keeping that in mind, let's look at a few points. First step is to see whether it is a formal letter or an informal one. Who are we required to write to? A friend. It is then clearly informal, isn't it? Do the instructions identify the gender? Yes, it does. It says, describe to her. Therefore, it is a female friend. Don't miss the Jane in pink on the screen though. So, the greeting and the sign off is quite straightforward. Dear Jane, not Bruce, and yours truly. Agreed. I'm sure you will not have any doubts on that one. Let's pay attention to the main part of the letter now. Let's read the prompt again. And I'm keeping on doing this as you need to remember what it is and not make a mistake. So the prompt goes 1. Describe to your friend a place worth visiting, suggest some eating options, and suggest a few transport options. As the introduction, you need to let Jane know that you are familiar with the city she is visiting. Then we will move on to covering the other three aspects: places worth visiting, eating, and travel options. The right way to conclude the letter would be by wishing your friend Jane a good trip. How can I let Jane know that I am familiar with the city she is visiting? Many ways, isn't it? In this case, I'm going to assume that she is visiting the city of Dublin. You can choose any other city. Let's see the options for introducing. Option 1. Hope this finds you in good spirits. I learned that you're planning to visit Dublin shortly. If only you could have visited while I was there 4 years ago, I would have shown you all the exciting places. Option 2. I have been meaning to connect with you for a while now. I'm happy to know that you're planning to visit Dublin over this Christmas. You could not have chosen a more festive time to be at Dublin. Option 3. I am pleased to know about your program to visit Dublin during Christmas. I had a wonderful time there this summer when I went for a 2 weeks vacation. So these are some ways you can let her know the city she is visiting. Since you are writing to a friend, the tone has to be friendly. There should be warmth because that is the way we communicate with our friends. Now, let's move to covering each aspect of the prompt. The prompt says that I need to tell her about a place worth visiting. Whatever place you recommend, you need to link it to the interest of the friend or connect it to the reputation of the city. You would not randomly rattle some places to a friend now, would you? Hey, go and visit the fountain, the lake, and Sector 20 market. No, you need to give some explanation for your suggestions. The ones that I have come up with are: 1. For a bird watcher like you, the first place to check out would be the Kews Park, which is at the center of the city. The park boasts of over 150 bird species and also has some excellent guides to help you with bird spotting. 2. The chocolate factory, which is situated in the center of the city, is one of the first places you must visit. It offers some free tours and tasting sessions. All my friends from Dublin rave about it. 3. Doma Art Gallery at the center of the city is a wonderful place to spend your time. It is the best art gallery in Dublin, and on occasions I have spent over 4 to 5 hours out there. Now, let's move on to the next aspect of the prompt. These were some of the ways in which I can recommend places for visiting to my friend. I am telling her a place and also letting her know why I'm saying it. Eating options. Eating options. Again, propose and give some reasons for your suggesting it. So, I have written 1. Right adjacent to the park, there is an aptly named road called Food Street. There are plenty of restaurants here, and they are all pocket friendly. My favorites have been Jim's Kitchen for Chinese cuisine and Ferns and Farms for Italian pizzas. Both the places offer mouth-watering food. 2. For eating, you have several options in the lane adjacent to the park. Since I know that you love the food of the Caribbean, I would recommend the Booming Bay restaurant that is quite close to the harbor side. If you choose to walk, it is a 20 minutes walk from the chocolate factory. 3. Doma itself has a wonderful cafeteria on its fourth floor. It has 6 or 7 excellent food outlets, and you get a wonderful view of Dublin from that height. Do take a seat close to the windows, though. So, you have seen I've given details of my suggestions. Remember to do that while you're writing as well. Let us now look at the third aspect, transport options. Note that it is in the plural. Options. Hey, see, this is when you need to read the prompt carefully. It is not option, but options with an S. So, you must mention at least 2 transport options. I have written 1. The white pavements make it very easy to go around the city by foot. You can also pick up a tram pass and use the trams for moving up and down the major roads of the city. 2. The best way to go around the city sightseeing is by renting bikes from Pedal Away. With bicycles, you can cover all the streets that you wish to go to. Parking in the city is never a problem, as there are designated bike parking spaces. 3. The city center is just over half a mile away from the bus station. While it is a pleasant walk, buses are also available every 5 minutes. The Muddocks railway station is about a mile away from the city center, and you could pick up a railway pass for the days you're planning to stay in Dublin. Now, we need to move on towards concluding the letter. Let's get into that. Okay, wait. Before I move on to the next part, let me clarify that I have come up with 3 ways of responding to your friend about the travel options. In the actual test, you can make use of any of the options that you feel is right. Now, I don't want any confusion. These 3 options are just alternative ways I have created for you to understand the prompt. Now, how would you conclude the letter? I have come up with a few options when it comes to concluding the letter. Let's jump into it. Wish you a wonderful time on your visit to Dublin. Do call and let me know about your experience. Or you could say, hope you have a great time in Dublin. Enjoy your stay. Or yet another way of concluding could be, best wishes for a delightful trip to Dublin. Remember to share pictures of your trip. So, these are again 3 ways in which you could possibly conclude your letter. I have given 3 options, as mentioned earlier, and you can make use of any one during the actual test. Now, let us see how my letter would actually read to her. I have chosen the paragraphs that I liked, and this is how my letter would actually look. So, my letter goes as, Dear Jane, hope this finds you in good spirits. I learnt that you are planning to visit Dublin shortly. If only you could have visited while I was there, I would have shown you all the exciting places. I would recommend that for a bird watcher like you, the first place to check out would be the Kews Park, which is at the center of the city. The park boasts of over 150 varieties of bird species and has some excellent guides to help you with bird spotting. Right adjacent to the park, there is an aptly named road called Food Street. There are plenty of restaurants here, and they are all pocket friendly. My favorites have been Jim's Kitchen for Chinese cuisine and Ferns and Farms for Italian pizzas. Both the places offer mouth-watering food. The wide pavements make it very easy to go around the city by foot. You can also pick up a bus pass and use the bus for moving up and down the major roads of the city. Wish you a wonderful time on your visit to Dublin. Do call and let me know about your experience. Yours truly, and you provide your name here. Well, that would be about minimum 150 words. It is actually 192 words. So no negative marks for this. Letter to Jane is done. I'm going to repeat once more though. Don't forget to read the prompt carefully. You must read it carefully. And now, let's look at another sample. Last year, you attended a German course at the Darwin College. Your HR has asked you to provide copies of your reports and assignments as quickly as possible. Write a letter to the principal of the college. In your letter, request him to send the documents, state the reason of asking for the documents, and ask till when you will be receiving them. Ah, this needs to be a formal letter. This is to a male person, as it says. Request him. And since it is a formal letter, you must remember to put the date after you sign off. So let's start with the letter. When it comes to the greeting, you can start by saying, Dear Mr. Murphy, note, it is not Dear Bruce. I would say this if it was a formal letter. And how do I sign it off? I could say, Yours sincerely. When I introduce, I need to let Mr. Murphy know that I was a student of the college. When I'm building the letter, all the aspects given in the prompt needs to be covered. Reason why I'm asking for the documents, request for sending them to me, politely inquire by when I can receive them, everything. And I would conclude by expressing my gratitude. Oops, I think I forgot. You must mention the date. Don't forget it, guys. The date is very, very important here. This is how my letter would actually look like. Tell me if it looks good. Now I will be reading out each sentence and I will be addressing how it is related to the prompt. So, I will be explaining each line and giving you a reason as to how I'm relating it to the prompts. Let's begin with the first sentence. In the first sentence, I have said, Dear Mr. Murphy, I'm sure that you will recollect that I attended a course in advanced German at your college last year. I had secured a distinction and received an award from you. So, with this sentence, I have established my connect with the principal. Let's move on to the second paragraph, which is part of the body. It is saying, My company has nominated me for an executive development program, and I am required to submit certificates of all external training programs that I have undergone in the last 2 years. The HR department requires the certificate as well as the reports and assignments related to the course. So, with this sentence, I have given the background to what I require and why I require it. Moving on to the next line, what I have said is, I have a request. Could I please get copies of my assignments and reports from the course GM223 sent across to me by email? My enrollment number at the college was 2020 by 223 by 45. The course was led by Dr. Martin Stein, and we used the college intranet for all submissions. In this sentence, I need to clearly explain the course. I have mentioned here which course I was a part of and my enrollment number, along with a few additional information like the course teacher's name and how the submission process was carried out. So, in a nutshell, I have to mention all the required details of my course. Now, moving on to the next sentence, I have said that it would be very helpful if the document can reach me by the 15th of December 2021. Please do confirm the date or let me know by when it would be possible for you to share them. In this sentence, I will need to specify by when I would require it and for the request confirmation as well. In the concluding sentence, I have said, I look forward to your positive response to this request to share the documents. Sincerely, Naomi John. In this sentence, I need to conclude with hope. Finally, at the end, I have written the email ID, which here is naomijohn@innovity.com, and write the date, that is 25th November 2021. Also, just to clarify, the main reason to give the email ID and date on this letter is because I have mentioned that the principal can provide the documents through email. Okay, now let's read the full letter once again. Dear Mr. Murphy, I'm sure that you will recollect that I attended a course in advanced German at your college last year. I had secured distinction and received an award from you. My company has nominated me for an executive development program, and I'm required to submit certificates of all external training programs that I have undergone in the last 2 years. The HR department requires the certificate as well as the reports and assignments related to the course. I have a request. Could I please get copies of my assignments and reports from the course GM223 sent across to me by email? My enrollment number at the college was 2020 by 223 by 45. The course was led by Dr. Martin Stein, and we use the college intranet for all submissions. It would be very helpful if the document can reach me by the 15th of December 2021. Please do confirm the date or let me know by when it would be possible for you to share them. I look forward to your positive response to this request to share the documents. Sincerely, Naomi John, naomijohn@innovity.com, and you provide the date, which is 25th November 2021. Overall, how is it sounding? This is 190 words. So basically, listeners, read the prompt properly and write in a simple manner and remember to cover all aspects. That is the trick. You don't have to use any pompous words here. No, just simple language. Just understand what you need to write and write in a very simple manner. Let me summarize the elements once again. The first one, greet. You need to check whether the letter is formal or informal and address the concerned person carefully, keeping in mind the gender. Second, introduce. This is the part which is related to setting the purpose and tone of the letter. The third one, build, which is the body. Here, you need to address all points given in the prompt. Fourth, conclude. Here, it refers to the expected action or the part where you say thank you. And lastly, the fifth point, which is the sign off. Here, you need to keep the type of letter in mind, whether it is a formal or an informal letter. So, in an informal letter, you need to sign off saying yours affectionately or best regards, and then you add your name below that. And in a formal letter, you need to say yours sincerely along with your name below that, and you have to mention the date. This is very, very important. So, this is it, listeners. I hope you found this informative. Do comment and let us know your views. And those of you who want to go through more samples, do listen to our future podcasts. We will also be putting up lots of samples on our website soon. So stay tuned to know more. Now in Win 3, I would be covering task 1 for IELTS academic test, which is report writing. Listen to the podcast where we will make report writing extremely easy for you as we show you the important bit and the not so important bit as well. Innovity helps you beat the band. Tune in to our different podcasts to Ace IELTS. We are there on all platforms. Look up on our website, our Facebook page, our Instagram channel, our Spotify channel, and our YouTube channel. We are easy to find. We make IELTS test easy for you. Bye.